দেখো তো, এবার আমি তোমাকে দিচ্ছি, দাঁড়াও আমি তোমাকে দিচ্ছি, তোমাকে ট্রান্সফার করেছি সেশন কন্ট্রোলটা। দেখো দেখি তুমি এবার করতে পারছো? মানে তোমার নামের পাশে আসছে কিছু? তুমি একবার লিভ করে আবার আসো তো, ঢুকো তো। Hello everyone, a very good evening from the team EmoSync, DFC, Dr. for Pause and Sangati Foundation, and thanks a lot for joining our session today. And we will start very soon. We are facing some technical glitches, and now it's good to start. So first of all, about today's session, we are going to host a session about this pandemic and the productivity pressure we are feeling from facing from our family, from our peers, from our friends. Probably we'll talk about it and we will take your questions. We have gathered some data already from you guys, and we will talk about it more first, and then we will take more questions from you. And it is going to be an interactive session where you will have your chances to ask us questions, and we will discuss about these problems we are facing. So a bit about EmoSync. EmoSync is a mental health organization. What we are doing is we are trying to build a community of people so that we can create a safe space for people who want to share their stories about their problems, about their perspective of mental health, and they can find a place where they can share their problems and without having any judgment. So that's about emotion. And also with if needed, you can take professional help, psychological help from emotion. And we will start this session from this, and Dr. for Cause and Dr. for Pause and also Sangati Foundation will give their intro and their details later at the session. And first and then now, sir, I will transfer the session control to sir and Tirthankar Guruthakurata, and he will start the session.
I hope I'm audible and visible, Shora.
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, fine. So, welcome back at the webinar series that we had started conducting from the early phase of the lockdown. And this is the second series. And in this session series that we'll be having under the names of remapping our minds, we will be talking about the issues of this very chronic and um, unsuspecting nature of the lockdown, this unpredictable nature of uh, shutdown of every activity. Because initially we had a thought that things are going to be fine within a few months, but now it's almost sure that we are not sure as to when this is going to end and how this is going to end. And we keep hearing from people, from our subjects, from the patients, from students, from workers in different offices, that they are facing certain unique kind of issues during this prolonged lockdown, which is causing an extreme form of demotivation, the failure to feel energetic, the inability to follow task and become productive. And on the other hand, this extreme pressure of being productive and proving your productivity to the rest of the society also feels something that adds to the pressure. So today's session is all about these three P's, about this pandemic, the pressure, and this urge of productivity that we are facing, how to face that without being overworked, how to ignore that in some cases, and how to work it towards your own benefit in certain other cases. So, Shora, before we start, it will be easier for us to start and streamline our discussion if we know the demographic composition of the people that we have here as audiences. So, can we start a few basic polls on age, sex, gender, so that we can have some idea of who we are dealing with today?
Absolutely, sir. I will publish the age range poll. Please vote.
So, audiences who are new to this platform, you will see a poll being uh, started. So please participate, and your individual polls will be all anonymous. Even we will not get to know who is opting for which option. We will only be shown the statistics, that is the percentages of the poll.
I think it's good, and we have a good statistics.
Okay. So yeah, we have the results. 49 people participated. About 84% of our today's audience is between 15 to 25 years of age. 6% is between 25 to 35, 8% is between 35 to 45, and 2% of the audience lies between 45 to 55. Can we have a sex and a gender poll?
Sure. Please vote, everyone. I think it's good to go.
Yeah. So regarding the gender poll, today we have 36% of the individuals who identify as male and 64% who identify as female. Uh, can we have a poll regarding the role of pets or animals?
Yes, sir. Before that, let's see the sexual preferences of
Yes,
our demographic today.
yes. And once again, your polls are anonymous. Even to the organizers, it is anonymous. So you can safely poll.
I think we can
Yes,
publish the
polling
result.
has been done.
Yes.
So in today's population, we have 86% identifying as heterosexual, 6% as homosexual, 4% each as bicurious and other. And lastly, can we have the poll related to the pets having some therapeutic values?
I think, sir, if you can explain a bit about that problem, I think we are having some technical problems regarding that
Okay,
poll.
okay, okay. Then maybe we can actually get back to the question, because we will also
Yes.
address the issue of having pets, caring for the pets, and being therapied by the pets during the lockdown. So you can also write about your pet-related issues, the mental health-related issues related to your pets. So with these questions, I think we are good to go. We have some idea of the demography we are dealing with. So, Garima, you are already here. So can Shorab transfer the session control to Garima, or Garima, can you hear me? Can
Yes,
you
I
directly
can.
speak to me? You can, right? Fine. So,
Mm, Gorima is transferred. Let's
Yeah,
try.
yeah, let us start, and then I'll take over.
yeah. So, hello everyone. I am Garima Dugar. So today we'll begin with the session. So, pandemic productivity and pressure. So, firstly, before beginning the session, I would like to have some for our viewers. What exactly do we mean by these three terms that we are dealing with today? So, if you can share some insight, like some details on the
Yeah.
exact meaning of the words that we are dealing with.
See, can you transfer the session control to me?
Yes, sir. So, just 1 second, sir.
Sure. So, see, when we talk about productivity, when we talk about uh, the pressure of being productive, one important issue that you will see people complaining of is that they think that when they have a lot of time, something fruitful has to come out of it. So there is this intense urge of being productive, of being someone who can uh, contribute in a way to the greater society. Whether this is correct or not, that I'm not saying, but what is true is that there is this subtle expectation from the society and from the family that if you are being non productive, then you are basically wasting the time. And occasionally, this creates a lot of pressure. This productivity can be in terms of creativity, can be in terms of earning, can be in terms of studies, can be in terms of anything for which we crave to have some time. Now we are having a lot of time, but there is a lot of procrastination, there's a lot of uh, demotivation going on. So under usual circumstances, this huge amount of time apparently could have been used for something which is considered productive by us. So it is this constant dilemma between this being productive and being pressurized to be productive. That is the topic of today's discussion. How far that is a healthy practice and how we should deal with this kind of pressures.
Thank you, sir. Since we had got some questions on our mail regarding the entire scenario, I would like we can start with the today's session with those questions.
Great. So is the PowerPoint slide visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So maybe the audiences also know that we had invited individual stories, individual issues, and problems to be sent to us through email or by private message, and we received quite a few. So we have taken those which have been recurringly coming over to us, and we see that many people are having similar issues. So without disclosing the identity, we are only presenting to you the problem or the thought process of the participant. Garima, this is one question I got from many students. The basic uh, interpretation of all those questions were more or less like this.
Yes, sir.
This is one particular question that I received. I am a 20-year-old medical student. Our college is shut down for academics indefinitely, and the online classes are often not as effective. However, there is some vague news that our regular examinations will be held in usual format. I'm totally clueless as to how to prepare and pass. Also, the indefinite nature of the lockdown is creating lack of deadlines, and I'm unable to make any time plan for study. Please help. Now, this question has been sent by someone who is a medical student, but I believe this is a common pattern in academics now. This is a very common issue that many students are suffering from. They do not have any deadline, any calendar in front of them stating the dates of the examination, whether the examination will be done in the uh, typical way or in some improvised way. What will be the methods followed in the examination? What will be the syllabus? Will the syllabus focus on the part that has initially covered or the one that has been covered, including those in the online classes? What about students who cannot access online education in an effective manner due to internet issues? So there are so many things that are blurring their minds, and there is an entire cluelessness about this education system right now. So, see, this is for the audience. In today's session, the format that we will follow is following each of these questions sent to us by the audience, we will give you 5 options. The options may be correct, may be partly correct, or in your view, it may not be correct. You choose one option that you think is the best. So, after I show you the options from A to E, you will see that a poll will start. So I'll request Shorab to start a poll, and this poll will have 5 options A to E corresponding to all this. So you choose the option which, in your opinion, is the ideal way to deal with this dilemma of academics and examination. What will you suggest, or what will you do? And then we will indulge in a discussion on the kind of polls that we get. Those who want to suggest something else that is key, you can write in the chat box what exactly do you think.
Let's start the poll.
Yes, let's start the poll. Which
You
one
can vote, everyone.
Meanwhile, I would also request everyone that if anyone has any related questions to the discussion topics that we have today, you can let us know in individual chats to the respective trainers. We'll deal with them. Don't worry, your names will be anonymous and we can deal with your questions.
So Shorab, let me know when the poll is over. So we'll get
Yes.
back to the results.
I think we have a good number of participants. So
Okay.
let's publish the result. I have published the result. Hello, can you
Yes,
see?
yes, yes.
So we see that most of the results, 59% of the result has gone for option D. Option D is that set small goals and do one task at a time. This is closely followed by option A, which says that follow a weekly routine to keep track of your work. The minimum number of response was for E, that is something else. And if you see the uh, individual chat, no one has written anything so far. And then also we got small number of responses for rewarding yourself for achievements and setting small goals. So again, let us see then what are the merits and demerits of each of these options, and which one might be, from a psychological or therapeutic point of view, uh, a right kind of option. Let us see. Okay, fine. So back to the question, you see, the question was about a medical student. This medical student uh, said that the academics and the practice of the academics was indefinitely shut down, and the online classes are not as effective as the offline classes. And there was a vague news that regular examinations will be held, and therefore the student is very clueless. Also, there is a lot of lack of motivation because there is no definite deadline to follow. So, considering these issues, uh, many psychologists would say that following a routine often helps us keep track of our activities. So, following a routine can be a good option. Also, there is one dilemma about whether the routine should be weekly or daily. This is something to consider. It has been seen that the failure rate of weekly routine is usually much more than the daily rate. The simple reason being that we tend to procrastinate, we delay work. So, one way that is suggested to be effective in keeping track of the activities is to simply set a number of activities as a to-do list for the week, and keeping those activities every morning when you get up, you choose 2 activities out of that. Do not choose the third activity until those 2 are complete. This ensures a slow but a very steady process of completing assignments. instead of going for a routine based assignment where delay in one will add up to the delay in the other, and then after some time it becomes a very vicious cycle, so we can never get back to the cycle again. It's better that you keep, say, about 10 to do list for 1 week. Each day you take up two. Maybe someday out of two you will be able to address only one. That is also possible. And that way, at the end of the week, you will have a count of how many actual targets out of those 10 have been reached. There is also a kind of, I should say, a difference of opinion between whether the goals should be short term or long term. I think both helps. Short term goals should guide your day to day activity or planner, but the long term goals help you focus. So this is something very interesting. I'll give you an example. Suppose you are preparing for a particular subject, and that subject has multiple chapters. Now, a short-term goal might be to finish one chapter, and therefore you set up a goal like solve last 10 years questions or read page number 9 to 29. These are the short-term goals. But you should also know what these short-term goals are adding up to. A goal should not be a stray satellite goal that has no final aim. So before you find out the short-term goal, note down the long-term goal. For example, your long-term goal may be to complete a subject in the month of December. Then you calculate then how many chapters you have to cover in 1 week. Based on that, you can calculate how many chapters you need to cover per day. And that sets the pace of your daily goal. You may even have a longer term goal in mind. For example, after passing a particular examination, what is it that you are going to learn? What will matter more, the skill or the marks? In some examination, the marks may be more important than the skill. In some examination, the skill may be more important than the marks. And your focus can be therefore streamlined to what exactly you want to do. So I think this is one way of looking at this whole option of setting goals and routines, and rewarding yourself at intervals is actually a good practice. The reward does not have to be a material reward. It can also be a pleasurable activity. For example, you set a goal like this, that your today's short-term goal is to finish 4 chapters. And you set a goal like this, that after you finish one chapter, you will get a 10-minute break where you can do something that you like. But before you finish that chapter, you will not be allowed to get up. So that is another way of setting very short goals, rewarding yourself for that goal, and moving on with that. So this can sound very theoretical, but even if you achieve 50% of your goals that you set at the beginning of the day, I think that is a commendable achievement during this kind of a time when motivation is actually a problem. And it has been proven that exercise does help in releasing the happy hormones in the body, the endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine. So, do any kind of exercise that you like to do. If you are not a very activity freak kind of person, then you can also go for simple morning walks or walk around in the terrace or in the street when no one is around. So, that is also one form of exercise that you can do. But being confined in a single room where you cannot see the external world, it impairs our circadian rhythm. You do not know when the sun is rising, you do not know when the sun is setting. And the whole day night cycle, the light dark cycle, gets totally disturbed. And that will later on manifest in your regulation of appetite, your regulation of sleep, your regulation of all other day to day activities, which depend on the light and dark cycle. So I think all of these options, or most of these options, are very useful, but you should know how to use these options. And finally, what is very important to know is that we are actually interested in examination oriented education, true. That is what we are learning. But that is often not the final goal of education. So, whatever stream you are studying in, there is a purpose for which you are studying that. So maybe you are studying medicine to become either a doctor or a teacher or a researcher. You are studying history to become a professor, a writer, or a teacher. So there is some kind of a bigger goal, and you will see that when you reach that goal, these small individual marks matter very less. There must have been a time when maybe in one of the nights before the examination in class 5 or 6, You thought this is the biggest examination of my life. And if I get 2 marks less, that will be a very big issue. And now standing here where you are, you do not even remember what marks you got in that particular subject in class 6. So these are very temporary issues which seem to be very important just before the goal is achieved, but in the long run actually does not have much impact. So it's also important to ignore issues that can be ignored without putting a lot of stress on yourself. So Garima, back to you.
Yes, sir. So, sir, there's another question from one of our um, audiences. Um, I'm a 23-year-old student. I'm
Hmm.
quite a social person who likes interacting and talking with people. I'm recently turning away from these actions. I feel lethargic to talk to speak with anyone and get irritated even if good friends call. Please help. So, a similar question
Yes,
had approached us on mail, if I'm not wrong.
yes. So let
I'll
me read that question out also, and
yes,
together we can address both the
yes,
questions.
sir.
Okay. So we also received a question in the similar line. It read something like this. So uh, this question was like, I have grown extremely irritable during the lockdown. I am having regular fights with parents at home and with my boyfriend over phone. Very trivial issues are making me angry and I'm losing control. How can I overcome this? We had a similar question right now where mood swings are the issue, and also there is a lethargy to socially communicate with other people. So, how do we overcome this? So, I'm suggesting a few options. You choose whichever you think is something that you'd like to follow or suggest. So, we can start a poll, Shora.
Yes, sir.
We can start a poll. So, the
Uh,
options are A, ask for privacy at home. B, meet your spouse physically if possible. C, maintain a personal diary. D, practice some random acts of kindness. And E is something else which you can mention separately.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. I would like you all to also assess your, like, you can always contact us for your queries. We'll, like we've been doing, we'll try to solve as many issues as possible. You can contact us on chat or any one of the trainers on personal chat. We'll try to do it anonymously if you wish to. Thank you.
we have a good number to go forward. I
Okay,
Okay.
think 56% have answered.
so if you can publish the results. Okay, so here again we have option D as the most sought after option, that is practice some random acts of kindness. We have option C following this, that is maintain a personal diary. Options A, B, and E have similar votes, like asking for privacy, meeting the spouse physically if possible, and something else. So, now coming to uh, the individual issues, the individual uh, ways of handling this. Emotional instability and also fragility is very common during this lockdown. See, the kind of emotional reaction we have also depends on the kind of stimulus we are receiving. When the external stimuli that we are used to is not uh, reaching us in the usual manner, our ways of looking at the rest of the world also changes, and also understand that this is happening to all of us. So the kind of problem that I am facing is also almost the same situation where my parents are ill. It is the same situation where my boyfriend or girlfriend is ill. It is the same situation where my friends are ill. So if there is a gap of communication or a disturbed communication from their side, they are probably suffering as much or in their own way as I am suffering. So this is something that I would like to call a collective distress that we are having. It is not a very individual distress that we are going through. This kind of event that is happening now globally is not seen in the last 100 years. I have not lived for 100 years, but I have even spoken to the most senior people in our colleges and in our family who are about 80 years old or who are 75 years old. They have never seen such an event. This is totally unforeseen. So therein lies the gravity of the situation, that this is something we are dealing with, which no one has any clue of how to deal with. Maybe 20 years down the line, there will be multiple research work and thesis work on psychological adjustment during COVID pandemic. But we do not have such a prototype case on which we can fall back on. That is the biggest challenge that we have. From medical treatment to psychological treatment, this is a new uh, totally new kind of stressor to the society, and we are trying to accumulate as much interesting divergent and convergent opinions as possible, and trying to build some kind of a collective knowledge pool, which in some cases may not be equally effective for everyone, because it is not customized, it is not streamlined for individual needs. We are still learning how to deal with the situation. So in such a situation, how do you stay happy? How do you stay positive? How do you stop or prevent fighting with family members, with close friends, with colleagues, or with your spouse? One important reason that has typically come up during other discussion sessions also is that this pandemic is forcing many of us to be confined in the same room or in the same house for extended number of hours. If even when I am living with my parents, suppose I am not exposed to my parents 24 into 7. I have my working time. So maybe I go out of home to work at 9. I finish my work. I come back at 4:30. Maybe I have some evening work for which I go out. Again I come back. This time gives me some personal space, gives my parents or my spouse some personal space. And this is a very important time. You should always spend time with yourself. And this is how the same room is shared at different points of time by different people. The room which is my study room in the evening might become the uh, newspaper reading room for my mother in the afternoon when I'm not at home. It can become the room where my pet sleeps at night. So we share the same geographical location at different points of time, and we share different geographical locations at different points of time, and in this very complex milieu we distribute ourselves. Sometimes we are with others, sometimes we are with ourselves only, and this gives us the scope to interact with others and with the self. What is happening in this pandemic is you are not allowed to go out. There is no division of space and time. So the space where your mother used to, say, for example, read the newspaper all alone, enjoying her own time, is also the space where you are using the computer or you are studying. The space where you used to study alone in your own way, in your own relaxed manner, now has become a place where maybe your brother or your spouse is sitting and doing their own activities. So we are now sharing spaces, and physical privacy is actually a big problem. One big way to solve this is A, to respect the other person's privacy. If that becomes the norm, then you are rest assured that your privacy is also respected. It's important for parents also to understand that they cannot scrutinize the activities of their children 24 into 7. No one is anyone's belonging or property that can be monitored. So they deserve their own time. Second important thing is you also give that time back to the other people. They also do not want the ringing of your phone, the noise from your YouTube videos to buzz them all the time. They are not used to that. They also have their own time. So then, how do you share the same space at the same time and again have privacy? The key is in cohabitation. Cohabitation can be easily practiced. Say, for example, your time of being in the college coincides with your parents' time of watching a popular Hindi or Bengali soap. Now you are spending that time either for study or for watching Netflix. But that is again overlapping with your parents' time when they access the television serials. So there is a kind of intrusion of common spaces that can be easily solved if you use a earphone. So you can use a earphone, use the same geographical space, give them the privacy that they need. You deserve the privacy that you need. In a similar manner, with a spouse also, we sometimes forget that our partners, romantic partners, are also individual human beings. So they are not there only to shower us with a 24 into 7 attention. So in the regular time frame also, they have their office hours or their college hours or their hours to spend with their own friends, hours to spend with himself or herself, hours to spend with the parents. So these are inclusive of all the 24 hours that they have. So just because a person is your romantic partner does not mean you have an immediate kind of right over all the minutes of the day that the person is spending. Now that because you have more time to think, you have more time to procrastinate, you have more time to romanticize, does not mean the other person will be devoting same amount of time to you. So this is also one thing that we have to understand. Physical distancing should be maintained because there has been a very recent interesting publication in the Indian Journal of Psychiatry on sexuality and sex in the time of COVID-19. The minimum distance that you need for preventing transmission of the disease is 6 feet. And it's impossible to have physical intimacy or sexual intimacy at a distance of 6 feet. So it's also the time when you have to think of unconventional or non-conventional ways of having sex if that is necessary, including digital sex. So a study has been very recently published on the Indian people's points of view on the newer forms of having physical intimacy without being physically intimate. So these are also options that one can look forward to. And finally, maybe the random acts of kindness are useful, not from just a spiritual point of view. We help others because it gives us a good vibe. We help others because when you help the other person, you feel superior. There is release of endorphin, there is release of dopamine, and you feel happy. So it also acts as a therapy. And it's a win-win situation where your help is helping the other person and the act of helping is helping you get over the gloomy situation. So I think these are a few ways by which you can stay positive, stay connected to your own self, and you can also stay connected to the people around you, respect their privacy and get your own privacy respected.
So there was a question regarding this by one of our viewers. Many
Mhm.
people are adopting pets in the lockdown and are saying that their free time goes in playing and cuddling the pups, and this is working like a stress buster. So does bringing a pet actually help in fighting depression and mood swings?
Yes, this is a wonderful question. Uh, Pets have been shown repeatedly to be very good stress busters. The emotional connection that we have with pets is something that is therapeutic on both sides. But asking this question that bringing in a pet, whether that will help me in fighting depression or mood swing, the question is subjective. From the point of view of scientific studies and social studies, yes, if there is a pet at home, that may not be a very formal pet also. Maybe you are only feeding birds on your terrace. So I'm talking of even non-confined pets as well. So if you have someone to take care of, and if that is from a different species, it almost always elevates your mood, prevents depression and suicidal ideation. That has been proven. But the other part of the coin should also be taken into consideration. A pet is not a toy.
That's
So you can only get in a pet if you are mentally, infrastructurally, and financially stable to sustain a pet in your family. It is not just like I will get a pet in my family because I need therapy. You also need to consider the size of the pet, the mobility of the pet, the freedom that the pet is going to enjoy. Whether after the lockdown is over, you will still need the pet. Whether after the lockdown, when you go out of the home, there is someone to take care of the pet. And also, you are financially stable to take care of the medical and basic needs of the pet. Only if these are met, then maybe keeping a pet will help. But there are, if finance or space is the only problem, there are ways of raising a pet without having your own space also, with very minimum fund. You can vaccinate and feed a dog, a stray dog or cat that is in your locality. That dog does not need to be in your house. Also, you can feed the birds, you can put water and other food materials on the window, and that also does not require a long term commitment. So, there are also short term ways of raising pets and long term, but whether you should go for any particular one depends on your circumstances. Garima. Garima, can you hear me?
So can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
So I was saying we've got one more question from one of our viewers saying, I'm 19-year old. Due to pandemic, I'm unable to pursue my career in my dream college, even after cracking it. I have faith, but I'm freaking out. Just 1 second. So I have, I have faith, and I'm freaking out. So help me solve this issue.
Okay.
Mhm. I can. There is another part of the question, sir.
Yeah,
Like
I just can't
she
see
is,
that question. Yeah. Can you just
yeah, sure. She is having disturbed sleep because all of a sudden she's feeling that she can't do it, and it's giving rise to negativity.
Okay. Hmm. So, of course, the question is not very specific, but it's understandable how you would feel if you have qualified for a particular examination and then you are unable to join because of the current situation. That is really not what we always wish. Again, repeatedly saying that this is a very atypical situation that we are going through. This is not the usual. So, I would not rather try to call this the new normal because we are yet to accept this psychologically as part of the normalcy. So this is a very stressful situation. I'm quite sure that that will get sorted. And you can also try writing to the university if possible, explaining your concerns. This apart, talking about the sleep and the other daily activities, one of the reasons that they are getting affected is because every day our sleep, our appetite, our day-to-day cycles of hunger, micturition, defecation, hormone synthesis and secretion, they are primed by various environmental signals or cues. So, for example, the smell of coffee makes you think in the morning that I have to go to the toilet. Although coffee smell has nothing to do directly with bowel movement, but this is a conditioned reflex that you have developed. You have this training that after coming out of the toilet, after freshening up, you have about half an hour time or 1 hour time to get ready for your college, for your school, or for your work. Now, imagine there is a day where everything is without a deadline. There is no office. So you can get up whenever you want. You can get up, then again sleep, and then again get up and then have the coffee. So you see, when this goes on for a repeated number of times, the signal induced rhythm of the body gets totally disbalanced. And because of the disbalance, it finally affects your sleep cycle, your hunger cycle, your toilet cycle, your uh, uh, overall hormone synthesis and release cycle, like the cortisol response cycle. And all these we ultimately culminate into an irregular sleep, uh, either highly increased appetite or absolutely no appetite at all, weight gain or weight loss. These will be the manifestations. One good way to avoid this is to follow a routine. And by routine, I do not mean a routine of work, it can also be a routine of activities. Like I'll get up in the morning whenever you wish to, and then jog for 30 minutes in the terrace. Or then maybe I will make coffee for all the members of the family, have coffee together. Or maybe I will listen to a song, a favorite song for 10 minutes. That can also be a routine. So if you make such routines, the body will adjust to the new social signals, the environmental signals. And ultimately, your body will be gradually accustomed with this signaling mechanism as well. So I think keeping a social routine will also help you regularize sleep, appetite, and other biological factors.
so we can go back to the question on our mail, I think. Um,
Yes. So there was one important question here,
yeah.
which I'd like to share with you. Just a minute.
Yes.
So this was a question that we received. Um, I'm a 22-year-old student pursuing my master's in humanities. In the initial phase of lockdown, I tried staying productive with painting and writing. However, this prolonged and indefinite lockdown has exhausted my energy. I am facing severe creative block and feeling pressurized when I see creative posts by friends in social media. I feel absolutely difficult to motivate myself. Am I losing it? So, this was the question that was sent. Again, you can see here the cycle of expectation from the society to be productive and the pressure that is building up because of that. That is happening here. So, my options to the audience will be, which option will you go with? Sure, maybe we can start a poll.
Yes, we'll start.
So, will you try a new hobby? Avoid contact with the social media? Introspect? Or you should not feel obliged to be productive? Or if there is something else you can mention.
I think this is a very valid question in today's social media. Like today's generation, we've all facing this. Like almost everyone is trying their best to prove their extra talents coming out and dance.
Exactly, exactly. You
So
can see dance, poetry, many things
yeah,
happening.
it's kind of also it's a good way to keep yourself motivated and productive. But at the same time, the people who are unable to do this are as at feeling at a loss because of this.
Yes, yes. And there is also because all of us are seeing the posts because things are often very common and repetitive in the social media. So everyone knows what is happening. There is no escaping from there. And
Yes.
everyone also knows who is not being productive in that sense of the term.
Yes.
So there is a part of guilt gradually building up in your mind that I am being worthless, not contributing in a way that I could have done.
Yes.
So do we have the polls or are they
Yes,
still
sir. I
polling?
have published the result.
Okay. So here we have maximum options going for D, that is, do not feel obliged to be productive. Then closely followed by C and D, that is, introspect and avoid contact with social media. And which is followed by A, that is, try a new hobby. And E is something else. Getting back to this question, see, this question also says a lot about the society than about the person we are discussing. We started this webinar series thinking of a model of a society which is far from being very perfect or utopian. We live in a very dystopian reality. And there is a reality where your abilities, we believe, have to be proven to the rest of the society, whom you owe nothing. That is the saddest part. So you are not supposed to give an explanation to people, but then you feel obliged to give explanation. This is a process. It's a process of evaluation that gradually consumes us. I'll give a simple example to this. When in the education sector, for example, in the schools, they have a system of ranking students and then attributing special qualities based on the rank. Like you are the first boy, so you will be the monitor. You are the first boy or the first girl, so you'll be roll number one. This creates a sense of hierarchy of achievement. We tend to forget that we as human beings are individual human beings who have only one liability, probably, to become ourselves. We have no liability to become the curriculum. We have no liability to become the first boy or the first girl. Or we have no liability to become the perfectionist in some other person's definition. This is also partly because if you see, there has been a recent shift in the education system, which is yet to be implemented. But if you go through the conventional education system that we go through, the subject wise approach, the divided approach, the approach of getting marks or not, essentially, this is a very colonial, very British system of education where you are preparing highly skilled laborers. Essentially, that. That is why you will see the protocols that doctors follow, or the protocols that an engineer will follow, or the kind of explanation that a particular humanities student would like to give in a very standard way of teaching will be all similar. They are similar because it is not you who matter. It is that information that matters. You are only a vector of that. You only carry that. I want my house to be built in a particular way. So I develop a theory of building a house. I teach that to every student so that every student can build a house in the same manner. That is the way in which this education system is running. It does not ask you that how would you build the house, or whether there is an alternative to house, whether we can live on streets, whether that is also a feasible option, whether there can be community halls, whether the concept of house can be done away with. That liberty you do not have in this education. And see, very paradoxically, the country and the culture that implemented this education system in our nation, that country has shifted away from this system of education. Their education system is more based on hands-on project, on having a liberty of joining, scoring some points, retaining it, and then taking a break. We don't have that option in India, because in India the education system is essentially an education system that produces skilled laborers and clerks. So essentially that is what we learn. Because the education system is like this, because it is very much outcome oriented rather than aptitude oriented. We are not interested in how much you learn. We are interested in how much you can contribute to the society. You will hear very common questions like, if the government is spending such and such amount on the education of doctors, doctors are bound to give service to the society. Doctors may be bound to give service to the society, but not on account of this logic. This logic doesn't stand. Then what about someone who learns painting? So, will a painter have to equally contribute to the society because that was a government painting college? It makes absolutely no sense. Education is a fundamental right. You have a right to be educated, and then you have a right to become whatever you want after receiving the education. That kind of thought process is totally missing here. So, when you talk about productivity, when you think about what am I doing in this lockdown period, you are thinking of being a part of a rat race, a race where people are proving their worth. I have absolutely no problem with people singing, people dancing, people recording, and people posting, unless it becomes a competition. As long as it remains an exhibition, I have absolutely no problem. So there is an exhibition. You are free to watch that, enjoy that. If you don't like it, don't watch it. That is totally fine. But that does not become a competition of achievement. When it becomes a competition, then you do not remain yourself. You are trying to become someone else who you are not. And even if you win a rat race, at the end of the race, you will remain a rat. You will not be promoted to a cat. So I think there should be a shift in this thinking process, that you don't have to be productive in a way other people want you to be productive.
So one of
So
the viewers says, I am a teacher and I have felt that education system, especially at school level, needs to focus on life skills and not only academics and rote learning. However, I find it very frustrating when I see parents only stress on examinations. How to deal?
the best way, if the person who is asking the question, if they are teachers, then actually it's easy for them to deal with this. I know that as teachers we have restrictions. Even I, when I work as a teacher in an institution, I have many restrictions. There are rules, regulations, limitations to what I can do and what I can say. But still you have some liberty in conducting your class and examination to some extent in your own way. If you promote the positive culture of appreciating people's understanding, of actually scoring people based on their day-to-day progress rather than a point evaluation on a particular day, if that practice can be brought about by you only, then the students expectation from the system will also differ, will start to differ. I'm just giving you an example. Suppose if I make it a policy that in my class I will never publish the marks of examination, but the marks of examination will be separately discussed with each student, and we will discuss the copies of where things went wrong, where things were good. But there will be no list where people can compare and see who got the highest mark and who got the lowest mark. Immediately, the competition shifts from competition with others from there to competition with the self. So next time the student starts thinking that next day, after the next examination, when I go to the teacher, I would like to score better than my previous examination, rather than better than someone else, ABC. So the way we evaluate, the way we hide information and expose information also creates a milieu. It creates an environment where a student learns what is the priority, what is important, and what is not important. As a teacher, you have the liberty of setting questions. So if you set questions in such a way that it encourages understanding and application, then the student for the next examination will focus more on understanding and application. Or if you format your marks in such a manner that a large percentage is on day to day interaction and involvement, and a smaller percentage is on how many answers you get correct on one day, then automatically their shift changes to day participation, and that is bound to bring about a good result on the last day as well. But what it does is it shifts your aim from marks to the knowledge. It shifts your aim from competition to self development. So, yes, as teachers, we can do certain things, of course, even within the confinements of rules and regulations. So, maybe that is the way we can help them. And talking about parents, uh, I am also a person who have kids at home. So in that way, I'm also parents to them. Parents either do not have much control over children nowadays, or parents themselves are so much goal oriented, they will most often mislead the child. So as a teacher, it is your responsibility to develop a rapport with the student and let the student pick up the thing. I think that is a more direct way of approaching the issue.
So, talking about teachers, a student has written, Sir, I am a student. I have my exams pending, but I don't get the motivation to wake up early. I feel like sleeping whole day and stay irritated throughout the day, which leads to quarrel with the people I love. Please advise.
See, if one thing that is not clear here is whether you are sleeping for more number of hours or you are sleeping in the morning. Sleeping in the morning as such is not a big problem. So if you sleep in the morning and uh, during this period of time you remain awake in the night studying, that may be your style of learning. Everyone has their own day to day cycle. Some people are good morning learners, some are night learners. So you may be a night learner who learns better at night. But if you think more number of hours are getting consumed in sleep, it's important that you increase your day to day activities. There is something known as sleep hygiene, which is very important. Sleep, like other biological processes like hunger, like micturition, like sneezing, these are also partly conditioned, partly unconditioned. So you see, micturition is an autonomic process. Micturition means urination. That is an automatic process. But you will also know that when you come closer to your home or toilet, you feel the pressure of urine is increasing, because there is a learned reflex that the proximity to the toilet means now I can evacuate the bladder. The smell of the food makes you more hungry. That is a kind of a conditioned reflex. Similarly, when you sleep, the environment where you sleep can be conditioned. There is a wonderful saying in sleep medicine: do not use your bed for anything other than sleep and sex. So if you do not use the bed where you sleep for any purpose other than sleep itself, since sex is not option for most people during the pandemic, so then what I'm suggesting is, suppose you are reading a storybook, don't lie down on your bed and read the storybook. You sit on the sofa, you sit on the chair, you sit on the floor, and then read the book. You are having tea, don't have the tea in the bed. You have it anywhere else but the bed. So you only sleep in the bed. And when you are sleeping in the bed, use a night lamp or a room freshener of the same color or fragrance every day. Try to use one or two bed sheets only, alternating that. So when these stimuli become constant, initially it looks like a ritual. But then after 5 or 7 days, your body identifies the cue. The same fragrance which you are using only during sleep makes you sleepy. The same light that you are using only during sleep makes you sleepy. The contact with the bed, which you use only for sleep, will make you sleepy. And if you fall asleep easily, your total requirement of sleep will also be fulfilled and you wake up early. So that way, I think this can be tackled by following kind of a sleep hygiene. Garima.
Yes, sir. So, another question coming up would be, how do I help someone staying with me who's having severe mental health issues themselves? I tend to lose my temper and be rude to them, even though I know that their situation is not under their control.
Hmm. See, the first thing is if a person has mental health issues, it is not important that we should be able to help everyone because we may not be mental health specialists. So it's like asking this question, if my dog has fever, how do I choose the right medicine? You don't choose the medicine. Your responsibility is to give the first aid and then take the dog to a veterinary doctor. That is the most wise thing to do. If my child falls sick and if I am not a doctor, I will not prescribe a medicine. I will take the child to a physician or pediatrician. That is the wisest decision. In a similar manner, if you think there is someone who needs psychological help, you give a general support as a human being or friend. There is no need to treat that person or give therapy if you are not trained in that, because then that will be the wrong practice. Instead, you motivate that person to visit a therapist or a psychiatrist. That will be a good practice of Garima.
So, next question coming up is, this pandemic is creating depression. On top of that, my pet recently died. This has created a sense of vacancy in my life, and the present situation is making it an unending one. How do I deal with this?
This is really a very sad and difficult situation. Uh, this pandemic, this year 2020, is probably one of the most sad year in the history of our life because there are only bad news coming. We do not have good news coming this year. So there are outbreaks of fire, there are explosions, there are famines, there are riots, there are deaths, innumerable deaths. There are pandemics without medicine. So honestly, we are all struggling. So I will not console you by saying that everything will be okay. What I'll tell you is that the grief is a normal part of recovery. So if you are crying for your pet, if you are feeling bad for the people you have lost in the pandemic, that is a quite normal phenomenon. It's okay to cry. That is the first thing you should know. So it's you do not require a medicine to stop crying. But if you think that this grief is taking over your day to day activities, so much so that you have stopped eating, you are losing weight, you are getting into difficulties in relationships, then you seek therapeutic help. You need someone you can talk to. That can be a psychotherapist, psychologist, or a psychiatrist. So that will be really helpful. Grief reaction is considered to be normal for about 3 months. So people tend to grieve, and of course, all people are not similar. So for some people, it can be 2 months, or for some, it can be 4 months or 5 months also. But if it extends beyond that period of time, then that is called a pathological grief. Then that has to be therapeutically addressed.
Uh, so, I'll take over the next question. Um,
Hmm.
So, since few days or weeks, I'm getting flashbacks from my past, not necessarily bad things, but good too. Like all people I've met in life, the times I've spent, accidents I've had, every minor things that in my head, and I really can't figure out why.
Can you please repeat the question once again?
So the person says, since a few days or weeks, I'm getting flashbacks from my past, not necessarily bad things, but good too. Like all the people I've met in the life, times I've spent with them, accidents I've had, every minor things in my head, and I really can't figure out why.
I do not think it is a disorder per se if it is not causing a lot of distress, because, as the question says, not all of them are bad. And life is made up of a combination of good and bad things. So, if there are flashbacks of memory coming back and they are all combinations of both good and bad thing, it is only a flashback that is happening, not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing that is happening. Now, that being said, uh, it's very difficult to say with this limited amount of information what is causing this, or what the person is perceiving as a flashback is a real flashback or it is an active recollection. So that can only be understood by a psychiatric interview. But if it is a simple flashback, maybe one thing you can do is note down the recurring thoughts that are coming in your mind in a diary. See if there is any pattern to it. See if there are certain issues that are coming up again and again, because you know your life the most, and the events that have happened, the chronology and the circumstances of the events, maybe there will be some trigger that you can identify which is bothering you. And also this diary will be of immense value to therapists that you go to understand the nature of your thought, uh, the flow of your thought, whether there is any obsessive element or a post traumatic element. So you just keep a record of that. Sometime that will help you only in organizing your thought and finding out a common source, and sometime it can become a very invaluable clue for a therapist who is talking to you.
So another question is, I'm an 18-year-old, was going to buy a violin this year, but due to sudden lockdown enforced, I couldn't buy and learn it. I feel a bit less productive than what I aimed for. How does a musical instrument affect mental health?
All kinds of hobby affect mental health. Music in particular stimulates various parts of the limbic system and cortex, therefore it makes us happy. And music also creates a repetitive pattern. This pattern recognition also improves cognition. Music is very linked to mathematics as well as the spatial pattern recognitions. Now, setting these biological things aside, coming to the social part of it, if it is the lockdown that is causing you not to buy a violin, that's sad, but maybe it can wait. Being safe is more important. And as I told you, that you do not have the liability to be productive. For the time being, you can choose another hobby that is pursuable. And I will not say that buying a violin is less important. It is very important for you. There are also issues that maybe are more life threatening that are happening right now. So let this violent pandemic subside. A violin can be purchased later also. There
So,
is one question, Garima, that has come up.
yes,
So
sir.
maybe I can share this question. It was shared. So I'm reading out the question for you.
Yes, sir.
The question says, I'm a 19-year-old girl and I identify as a boy. I have always had problems in my family for my gender identity, mannerisms, and dress, but I could stay away from those criticisms because I stayed in a hostel. Now it has been more than 5 months that I am staying at home. I find the behavior of my family members very rude and suffocating, and I'm feeling very helpless. So, this is one question that has been sent by someone. These, Garima, I feel is also another common pattern of questions we have been receiving.
Yes, sir.
Uh, we have seen that there is violation of the private space when we are forced to live with people with whom we do not spend a lot of time, like the parents. So it's not that you dislike them, maybe you like them very much, but spending an extended period of time without break can be sometimes very suffocating. That is always there. That is true for any relationship. These apart, when a person has uh, a gender non-conformative identity, or if a person is uh, transgender, or if a person is gay, lesbian, or bisexual, and their family do not approve of their sexuality, a few problems can happen during the pandemic. Most often, we get our support system from friends who may or may not belong to the LGBTQ community. So, friends often are more trusted in issues of sexuality. Uh, Even sometimes teachers, elder brothers, sisters, they are trusted more than parents or grandparents. Now, when for some reason you are forced to stay in a toxic environment where you are not accepted the way you are, but for the sake of the pandemic you also cannot go out, that situation can really become very suffocating. So one suggestion to the parents would be to understand and appreciate that every human being is different, and they need not become a replica of you. And from the point of view uh, of the person who wrote this, my suggestion to them will be that because it's a very difficult time, do not get into direct confrontation or fight. So I do not know whether you have been accidentally made to reveal your gender identity, or it has always been like that, or you came out actively. Whatever the scenario is, you need to be financially and socially stable to fight back. So, as long as that situation is not there, do not go into a verbal fight with the family. I know it's a very difficult situation, and if you write to us, to Doctors for a Cause, HemoSync, Doctors for Pause, or Sanghati, we will give you the contact numbers, email IDs, or phone numbers of several organizations who work for LGBTQA causes. So you can directly talk to them for therapy over phone or suggestions over phone. But stay safe in this pandemic and do not take any hectic decision. That will be my suggestion. Yes, Garima, you were talking about some other things.
So, this is coming from a person who had previously questioned that regarding that there was someone he knew or she knew of that was suffering from a particular mental health issue, and she couldn't or he couldn't help them. So he's saying is, I feel like I wasn't clear about my question. The person I'm talking about isn't very willing to take medical help. How can I motivate them to do the same? And how do I make things easier when there's an acute episode ongoing?
So, firstly, I do not know the nature of the crisis. What I mean to say is that whether it's a mood disorder, a bipolar disorder, or a psychosis, because I mentioned these diagnoses specifically because manic episodes and psychosis can come with violent outbursts where there can be physical injury also, which may not be totally always present in other kinds of mood disorders. Now, whatever be the nature of the psychiatric issue that the person is facing, if they are not motivated, one way is to break the stigma gradually in the family. Use more accepting words like we are going to a medicine doctor, or we are going to a counselor, or we are going to a neurology doctor instead of using the word psychiatry. And we know that sometimes even those things do not help. Then again, I'll get back to my previous opinion. What do you do to a child who needs a medicine but is unwilling to take the medicine? At least for the sake of the child, you force the child. So there is no harm in acute emergency, particularly when the insight is lost, in the good faith of not harming and benefiting the patient if you force the patient to get admitted or to visit a doctor. In cases of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, forced admission is often needed because insight is lost. So that is one place where we cannot exactly take consent of the patient. We take consent of the well-wisher or the caregiver of the patient. So being a caregiver or well-wisher, you first try to make the person understand, and that does not work. Either the doctor can come home or you can force that person to go to a doctor. The same thing you will do with a child.
So the person who had questioned regarding his sleep cycle, that he was a student and he was feeling sleepy the whole day, he has written in the question I mentioned that I don't get the motivation to do something, do anything as well. Even if after I wake up, I feel like doing nothing and being idle. Every day is passing by and I don't get the motivation to do anything, even the daily course. This is respect to the person who had questioned the.
I think this has already been discussed. We were talking about the demotivation thing
Yes, sir.
and how motivation can be brought about by setting up a few topics as a to do list for a week. Then every morning you select a few topics as the day's list. Don't choose more than two topics and choose the third topic only after the second topic is completed. And after each one topic or one activity that you have completed, you reward yourself with a break. So that was a kind of a format that we were suggesting that could be used here.
So, talking about addiction, we had another question. I think it is also a similar question that we have been dealing with previously.
Mhm.
Um, saying, I have started smoking and drinking excessively during lockdown. I have tried to cut down, but I am failing. How can I help myself?
See, this is also another big issue during the lockdown period because there is no external stimulus. So we are running out of stimulus, we are getting more and more depressed. And in a situation like this, we often crave for instant gratification. And this instant gratification can come from substance use like cigarette, alcohol, cannabis. It can come from non-substance use also, like gaming, like internet addiction, like pornography addiction. So things that give you an instant kick or dopamine surge, people are going for that. Now, you cannot always blame the person because the person has no external stimulus coming in. But if the method followed is something pathological, something as pathological as a substance use, then it has to be cut down. One thing is to stop the availability of the substance. In lockdown, the shops were initially closed, and many people were actually having withdrawal attacks. Now that the shops are open, it's a kind of a lockout also we are having simultaneously. So both alcohol and cigarette is available. That is one big problem. So you try to cut down with the help of motivation from a friend. You confess to a friend. You express to a family member and say that person should keep an eye on you so that you don't smoke. That is one way it can be stopped with strong motivation. But if it doesn't help, then you do need medical help. So there are different kinds of medical therapy, like using bupropion, acamprosate, or nicotine patch, which can help. That has to be only prescribed by a registered medical practitioner.
So I think we've discussed a similar question before. I'm a 20-year-old and I'm constantly feeling in lockdown that I still don't have any special achievement in life. Watching people of my age, either on social media or any other platform, achieving great creates a sense of hopelessness and worthlessness.
Yeah, we already discussed issues like this. So essentially, Garima, what I feel is that the questions that we received today
Yes.
are a combination of questions about this pressure for being productive,
Yes.
this very socially internalized uh, competition of being at the top or achieving to become at the top of something, of winning the race, and not understanding that this is actually not a very usual situation that we are going through. So it is not a situation where we can expect even life to be very kind to everyone. There are people who are not getting food. There are people who do not have shelter. There are people who have to walk miles to reach their home. There are people who have lost their jobs. So I'm not undermining the struggles of the apparently privileged class because everyone have their own troubles. What I'm trying to make you understand is that it is not a very usual time we are going through. So we cannot normalize everything. That is one thing. Let us be very open to this option that not everything will be the way it was 6 months before. That does not mean we can stop being happy. So happiness is also about the balance between what you want and what you need. And understanding your own wants and your own needs is also a very important key to understanding what can make me happy. So if I set my goals, if I set my needs and wants at a level which is not achievable during the pandemic, I will remain unhappy. So you have the option of writing the last chapter of your day. At the end of the day, you can be content with what you have. At the same time, try achieving better things on the next day. Or you can always be discontent and think that you have achieved nothing. So that kind of cognitive interpretation is totally in your own hand. It is you ultimately who decide whether you will be happy or not.
So
Garima.
yes, sir. So talking about again, a medical student is saying regarding studies and distractions. There are two more questions, I think. Yeah, I am a 23-year-old final medical student. I have started feeling extremely anxious and lost 4 months now. The fact that some of my classmates have been going on and about how pros- how prosecutive they have been does not help me at all. Because of staying So just one second. I've lost the question. Just one. Yeah, because of staying cooped up, I'm more frustrated and I'm making stupid choices for attention. What do I do?
See, that you're understanding that you're making options that you consider to be stupid, which simply means that your insight or your judgment is working. We all make mistakes. And if you yourself think that the decisions that you did uh, for staying cooped up is uh, a frustrated decision, a decision which was very desperate, then it's worth waiting before you take the decision. The thought that you are having as an afterthought can also be a before thought. So you can think before you walk. So I know this is a difficult time. If you think that you are prone to such impulsive behavior, if you think that you are uh, prone to uh, do things that you repent later, then it's important that you think first and then act.
Yes, sir. So I think we can take up the last question we have for today. What
Mhm.
would be we look up to other people like family, friends in various aspects of our lives, and in a way, our happiness becomes dependent on them. And once we depend on someone, it's now not easy to get yourself out of it. And that we cannot get ourselves out of it induces guilt and self pity. And in these times, this guilt and pity are getting accentuated. How to be actually be in charge of your own happiness. We actually dealt with a similar question previously, I think.
This is actually a very interesting question because it not only talks about the pursuit for happiness, but it's also very important to understand that uh, you are also a very important person in your own life. Most of the time, we forget that we are also an integral part of my life. It's a person whom you are living with 24 into 7. Not even with your romantic partner, you are living that long. You are totally in charge of your feelings, your emotions. You know exactly what is going on. You cannot hide things from yourself. And you are that person whom you often fail to recognize as an individual. You will see many people feel that when they are alone, they feel lonely. Now, we often say that if you are lonely when you are alone, then you are in a very bad company. So you should start considering yourself as a person whom you can give company. You should know what you want, what you like, what you dislike. Your happiness then will not be dependent on the presence or the acknowledgement of other people. It is not about being unsocial. So you will meet other people. You will take advice from other people. You will try to make other people happy. But if that also makes you happy, that is not the only thing that will make you happy. It is also you who should make yourself happy. It is you who you should be able to talk to or introspect with. So unless you consider yourself as a very important entity, it's very difficult to be happy with yourself, because then your entire concept of happiness will lie on other people's perspective of you.
Yes. So I was talking about distractions. There's a question related to that. Recently, I'm having trouble focusing and I'm getting distracted very easily. Could you please tell how to combat distractions? What about the people who love to set higher goals for them? How to set goals pragmatically in this lockdown phase so that it doesn't drain you?
So I think this is also very similar to the things that we discussed. Distractions often happen because sometimes we think that a lot of stimulus can make us distracted. Distraction can also be due to inner stimulus. There may be a thousand of thoughts automatically generated in your mind. And when you are actually in a rigid schedule with a deadline, you tend to ignore these automatic thoughts and your distractions are less. It's almost like studying the book on the night before the examination. You always have best attention on that day because you have to finish something within a deadline. You cannot cater to your internal thoughts. Now that these deadlines are much more relaxed and indefinite, distraction is creeping in. So, in such a situation, it's actually good if you set deadlines for yourself. If you think you cannot stick to your own deadline, ask your teacher or your friend to make a group and set deadlines for study. That way, you will feel responsible if you do not complete the assignment within that stipulated amount of time. And this kind of stimulus often helps in finishing uh, both academic and non academic goals within a definite amount of time and reduce distractions.
So I think that's the last question coming in for today. I feel good when I study with the apprehension of exam and can absorb a lot from the study. But with when these exam stuffs come in my mind, it puts a lot of stress and spoils my motivation to study happily. And it gets aggravated thinking of competitive exams.
Hmm. So essentially, what you are talking of is what we sometimes call is the stress curve. The stress curve is the relationship between stress and performance. It is seen that when you gradually become stressed, your performance level increases. Then, at a point of stress, the performance level is maximum. Then, if the stress further increases, your performance level will fall. This beginning part of the stress that improves your performance is known as the good stress or eustress. And the falling part of the curve has the excess amount of stress which decreases performance, that is the bad stress or the distress. The exact optimum point in between is something that varies from person to person. So you have to see whether the amount of stress that you put in, does it actually impair your results? Does it impair your understanding and consumption of information? If it is, then you should get treated, not to become anxiety free, to tone down the anxiety to the level at which it is optimum. No anxiety before examination always causes poor performance. Anxiety makes us more prepared. You become alert. Your pupils dilate, your pulse rate rises, oxygen supply to the brain rises. It makes you more alert and prepared to face the examination. But when these overwhelm your system, then that becomes counterproductive. So you must learn to balance the stress to the level that you feel motivated, but not to the level that you are collapsing. And if you are collapsing, there are wonderful treatments available for anxiety. Those drugs can be given not to make you a person with zero anxiety, a person with optimum anxiety that improves performance and does not decrease it. So that is how it can be dealt with.
Thank you, sir. I think that was all from our viewers. Like sir said, you all can always contact any of the four organizations conducting this webinar with your questions and queries. We'll always, forward them to sir. And so we will meet you soon, maybe next week, Sunday, that is, with another series of, we'll continue this webinar series on next Sunday. The topics and the details will be shared soon. So you all can stay tuned on our social channels for the updates on all four organizations. We'll keep you an update about the next webinar topic. So stay tuned on our social channels. Thank you, sir. Thank you, all our viewers, for joining in. I am Garima Dugar. So I'm Garima Dugar from Doctors for a Cause. Doctors for a Cause is a non-profit, non-governmental organization working towards the welfare of the society in general. We are a body of medical students, young doctors, and interns all over the country, basically. We seek to spread awareness, education, and goodwill. So, recently, Doctors for a Cause is coming up with some events that I would like to share with you all. Just one second. I hope you all can see my screen. Um, so, just one second. So this is a initiative by the Differently Abled Task Force of Doctors for a cause called Sinolog, where communication gaps are a real thing. Inability to understand each other is stressful, but imagine not being able to talk or be understood by all. Isn't that what deaf and mute people go through? So stay tuned every Wednesday and Saturday at 7:30 p.m. on our social channels, on our stories for the Sinolog session by the Differently Able Task Force of Doctors for a Cause. And we have another event coming up by the LGBTQ community of Doctors for a Cause, which is a queer affirmative group psychotherapy session. The LGBTQ Task Force of Doctors for a Cause is conducting an online group therapy for queer folks led by Mumbai-based queer affirmative therapist Anshul Narang. Co-affirmative therapy is an approach to therapy that embraces a positive view of the LGBTQ identities and relationships. So if you're interested, please check out our posts and details on how to register. All the information are given on our social channels. And if you need any further details, you can always contact me or any of the Doctors for a Cause members, we would be happy to help you. I would now request Saurav to take over from here. Saurav, can you hear me?
Uh, yes, I can. One second.
I'll just transfer the session to you.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you, Dr. Tirthankar Gurthakurata, and thank you, Gorima, and other moderators for this amazing session. And also, thanks a lot for participating and joining hands with us to spread this awareness about mental health and what we are going through. So I we will continue for next 10 to 15 minutes. Please be with us. The next thing we will present is an initiative by Doctor for Pause. I would like to invite Prerona. uh, Prerona, can you listen? Can you hear?
Am I audible?
Prerona, hello.
Hello, I am audible.
Yes, you are audible. And Prerna, let's start, and I will present the presentation you have given me. Sure. Hello,
Yeah,
Prerna.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
let's start.
So, hi everybody. This is me, Prerona Bhomik. I'm one of the co-founders for Doctors for Pause. Well, DFP or Doctors for Pause is a non-profit organization co-founded by 5 medical students of KPC Medical College and Hospital. All of us are animal lovers. Well, from buying fluorescent collars for accident-prone dogs to arranging for treatment of injured dogs and also conducting mass deworming and vaccination programs, DFP is a small endeavor to make the lives of neglected dogs on the street a bit joyful and easier. Well, all our groundwork presently revolves around the strays within the college campus. That alone includes close to 40 dogs. Well, in future, however, with enhanced resources and connectivity, we plan on expanding further. And now we are presently taking in donations for our neuter drive of the dogs within the KPC campus. And you too can help us, everybody, with this venture and make it a success if you want to donate. I think the details are visible to everybody. And we are also active on various social media accounts like Facebook and Instagram, where we give updates about our groundwork and try creating awareness about various issues through posts and everything. Recently we are trying to spread awareness about therapy dogs and their benefits also. Do follow us and share. I think the links will be for the accounts will be provided in the chat box. And if you want to reach out to us also, and like you want to convey any information that might be of help or be a volunteer, you can email us at doctorsforpause@gmail.com. I think the links will be provided in the chat box too. Well, that's it. Have a nice day. I think I'm done.
Hello.
Hello.
Uh,
Uh,
I think
I
Saurav.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh,
Hello.
Yes.
hello.
Can you see me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot, Prerna, for sharing regarding Dr. Purpose. And another organization we collaborated with is Sangati Foundation, and their co-founder is not here today for some technical issues. So I will share the details. So Sangati Foundation is a registered trust and works to improve accessibility, mobility, inclusivity, and visibility of persons with disability in India. Our focus presently is on skill development courses in the field of IT and software, with a view of empower people with disability to find self-sustainable employment and or entrepreneurship. We also provide platform for sports art and other performers. So if you any of you guys if want to join this organization or need help, need any kind of help, please feel free to uh, like whatever channel you have, you want to you want to connect with us, please feel free to message us, text us on our Facebook pages, Dr. for Pause, Dr. for Cause, Emosync or Sangati Foundation, our contact number, WhatsApp, Facebook, whatever channel you have access with, please feel free to message us. And I would like to conclude the session. And as Sir was, Dr. Tirthankar Thakurata was saying, like, there are few messages about like how we should cope up with things and how we should spend our times. And quite ironically, I'm sitting on my bed and doing this session. I think it's something very ironical. But what is really important here is also, like, we are doing this session as trainers or co-trainers, and also we are breaking the rules, and I think that's absolutely okay sometimes in this time, so to do that. And what is more okay in this time is really to understand that our achievements or our productivity is not really connected to our self-worth. So it's really important to understand the difference, the fine line between our self-worth and our achievement and our productivity. So I think it's really important to take care of ourselves, take to really help us to so that we can help others. And I think this is a great session, and thank you guys for joining. Thank you for the participation. I seen that the active participation from you guys, the questions, the really the insights from the team and from the participants. And thanks a lot. We will do this. We will continue this session. This is just the first episode. We will continue this session throughout this month and the next month. So there is a lot of scope to share insight, to learn from you guys, to share our perspectives, and really to take care of ourselves. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for joining. Take care.
Can I just take over from here?
Please.
Yeah, thank you everyone. So sorry, I'll just take another 2 minutes. Can you just hand over the session to me?
Sure.
Thank you everyone for staying tuned for so long. I'm so sorry I just missed out. This was a beautiful webinar. We are, like Saurav said, we will be continuing this session next week also, provided you all show support and keep supporting us the way you are. And so this initiative was actually in collaboration with Emo Singh, Doctors for a Cause, the Mental Health Task Force of Doctors for a Cause, and the Sankhati Foundation. Thank you everyone for staying tuned and for the beautifully answered question to all of our doubts that have been coming in through mails and the chat session today. Hoping to see you again next week with more queries and such interesting conversations. I am Garima Dugar signing off on behalf of all four organizations. Thank you, everyone.